Hey guys, welcome to episode 31. This one actually is a fan request video. Recently, someone asked me if I could do a video on how to clean sand and gravel and rocks and driftwood and plants and all the other fun stuff that we end up placing in our aquariums. And it's a good question. Especially the sand part of the question, because it can pose a lot of problems. So I guess I'll start from the beginning and just kind of talk through some of the things that I do when I go to purchase these products or find these products, and how I clean them and how I prepare them before I put them in the tank. Because ultimately, when they hit the tank, you want them to be as clean and sterile as possible, so that you're not introducing any bacteria, any living organisms, or any oils or residues or anything else that could negatively impact your system. So with sand, what I do here is, this is actually a 5-gallon bucket with sand that I've rinsed. This stuff is about a year old. It's the same stuff that's in here, and it's the same stuff that's in there. I just haven't added it to one of the tanks yet. I'll probably end up dumping it in this tank, actually, because this one's a little low on sand. And I decided not to put any sand back in my 55-gallon fish tank. But anyways, what I do is I actually buy the high desert play sand from Home Depot, and it comes in I think it's like a 25-pound bag of sand. It's pretty heavy, and that stuff is really dusty when you get it. So there's two methods to clean sand, and the first one is to dump an entire bag or half a bag into a 5-gallon bucket and grab a garden hose. And what you do is you just stick the hose in the bottom of the bucket, and you just kind of you use your hands to kind of lift the particles up and turn them over. And if you do that enough, a lot of the dust will get into the water column, and it will spill off the sides, while all the heavy stuff, all of the good particles will stay towards the bottom, and those ones don't cloud up your water. You'll notice I have some crushed coral, number 5, mixed in here. I got a couple bags of that, and the process is the same with that stuff. That stuff is dusty as well when you get it. But when it gets cold out, like it is now, I actually change my method, and instead of grabbing a garden hose and going outside, I actually do it indoors. And I probably wouldn't recommend this if you own your house, but I'm renting, so I don't want to say I don't care quite as much, but I don't think the consequences are going to add up over the long term, because I'm only here for a little while. Anyways, so what you do is you take a 200 thread count pillow, and you put probably about half of a 5-gallon bucket's worth of sand, old sand, into the pillow. Even, it doesn't need to be new sand. It can be old sand. And you tie the pillow at the top, and you run water in the tub, and you just kind of knead the pillow. You knead it, and you flip it over, and you knead it some more until the water starts to run clear. And you're going to need to drain the tub and fill it back up, and drain it and fill it back up, probably 3 or 4 times before the bag of sand runs clear. But that's another process. I don't really think any of that accumulates in the pipes, because it is just dust. It's not the heavy particles. All the heavy particles, those are the ones you want, and those are the ones that stay in the pillowcase. But that's another method, and that's actually what I use to clean this. And as you can see, it looks fairly clean. It's been sitting in this bucket for a month, and it doesn't smell, so I'd say it did a pretty good job. So that's sand. Gravel is pretty similar, although I don't even bother to use the bucket. I just chuck a bunch of gravel in the tub, and I just fill the tub up so that it covers the rocks, and then I just kind of break all of the dirt and debris free from the rocks, and I rinse with the shower head, and I let it all kind of go down the drain, or I catch it before it goes down the drain. And that's kind of all there is to it. I mean, gravel usually stays fairly clean. This stuff is actually river rock, or actually it's ocean pebbles, beach pebbles. And I would actually recommend this stuff over the gravel that you can buy in the pet store, because a lot of that stuff has paint that's just been applied to it. And over time, the paint will start to fleck off, and it just starts to make a mess. So this stuff is much more natural. When you're talking about larger pieces of rock, such as like cobbles, typically granites are fine. A lot of the rocks that you're going to find are completely chemically inert, but some of them will affect your pH, and they're I want to say there's one test that I've heard of where you just pour vinegar on the rock, and if it bubbles, then that means that you might have a pH reaction if you toss the rock in your tank. But if you stick towards rocks like granite, you're not going to have a problem. And honestly, who doesn't want granite in their tank? It just looks awesome. So that's rocks. They don't really get dirty at all, but you can wash it similar to gravel. So with that, let's talk about driftwood for a while. I decided to purchase Malaysian driftwood, and it's one of the better decisions I've made. It's very low maintenance in terms of driftwood. A lot of the cheaper driftwoods that you buy won't sink naturally. They float. Wood floats, but there are a few types, Mopani wood and Malaysian driftwood. They actually sink naturally. They're less buoyant, and they're more dense than water, so they sink. These pieces came from Malaysia. They were cut up and sandblasted and sun dried, and then they got shipped over. Basically, they came ready to go in the tank. I obviously soaked them in the tub for a few hours just to make sure, and I kind of scrubbed them a little bit, but they weren't that dirty. They're a little dusty, but they weren't that dirty. But this is the type of wood that you want to purchase. You really don't want to go out and find a piece of driftwood yourself, and if you do, you better know what you're doing, because there's a lot involved with it. There's a lot of bugs and decay that could be going on with the wood. If it's been sitting in the ocean, it's probably all slimy, and it's probably waterlogged, and that water is going to go sour pretty quick. I've tried before. I've tried with logs that I thought were completely sun dried, but they weren't, and they actually break down a lot quicker. So Malaysian driftwood is definitely my recommendation, and I've been happy with that so far. So the only other thing I have to talk about is plants. And with plants, probably the biggest thing you need to worry about is hitchhikers. And there's really no good way to collect plants from the wild without introducing things like snails. And some people don't like snails, but my terrapins actually love to eat them. But there are a lot of bacterias that can come with plants. So wild caught plants aren't typically advised. One thing you can do if you do collect from the wild is just create a bath. Draw some water, put a little bit of bleach in the water. I think it's like one part per 1,000 or 1 part per 100, a very very low concentration of bleach in the water. And if you put your plants in there for just a minute or two and kind of wash them around, they will typically be cleansed of any of the bacteria or any of the other living growth that is much smaller than them that is on them. And obviously, one thing you want to do is make sure that none of the water that your plants came in enters your tank, because that's just asking for a lot of that bacteria to transfer as well. But I would rinse your plants after that and then introduce them into your tank. I got these from the wild, and I did end up rinsing them in the tub before I introduced them, and even now they're kind of on their own here. And there are some snails, but I think those came from my tanks, from the water that I transferred, and not from the wild. So that's about all I have on how to clean sand and gravel and rocks and driftwood and plants before you enter, put them in your tanks. So yeah, I mean, don't be scared to collect things from the wild, but I mean, things like sand, it's just much easier to buy it in a bag and wash it. But a lot of people don't do a good enough job with the washing, and when you put it into your tank, your tank ends up being cloudy. But just take some of these tips and tricks, and I do recommend the Malaysian Driftwood. It looks good. It sinks by itself. You don't need any slate in your tank, and you can kind of position it any way you want. So that's what I got. Hopefully I answered your question, and hopefully this was helpful to other people as well. All right, guys. See you later.